Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about One Battle After Another. Now, this is the latest film from Paul Thomas Anderson and is his second adaptation of a Thomas Pynchon novel. I haven't read those, my dad did, so I'm assuming they're weird and stuff. But this movie is weird. It is about revolution, it's about the I guess, kind of legacy of revolutionaries. Also, sorry if my voice sounds weird. I'm a little sick. Apologies. About the legacy of revolutionaries, about the legacy of the future of revolutionaries, both what they accomplished before and what the children of them would be. Also, just the weird, strange, nonsensical world we live in, and how the things that drive our world are both hateful and stupid. And the people who have got to stick around are maybe just as stupid, but they're sort of, in my mind, kind of trying their best. This is a film about, if you ever heard the term, the best thing you can do is just show up. I forget that term, like 80% of your job is just showing up or something like that. That is Leonardo DiCaprio's character as a parent, as a revolutionary, as everything. But you both are like, this guy's a loser, but also like, I mean, he was actually there. So he was the one who did it. He might not have been the one you want to, but he was the one who did. And, I don't know. I'm not the, was it? I'm not the father. I'm the one who stepped up or some not, those phrases or whatever the point. I like Paul Thomas Anderson. He's been a big director. I think he hit around it. Boogie Nights came out right when I was getting into movies, and he's been this constant big auteur or director whose style you can notice or whatever through this whole thing, and he or through my whole cinematic life. And I don't think he's ever made a bad movie. I think he makes at the worst they're interesting, and I think this is a really interesting, tense, exemplary kind of movie. Actually, he uses some of the best actors we have around. He uses people you never get to see have this much fun while also being very serious. It's both like sort of satirical and silly, but also serious, but also you're like, maybe this is the world. It kind of in some senses reminds me of like David Lynch, and particularly like Twin Peaks with the weird like Sons of Christmas or whatever the fuck. And like it really, I think, shows a real original, odd kind of studio film, the kind you think that I'm supposed to say we wouldn't make anymore. And I know, obviously, this was made because Warner Brothers fucked up with their Project Popcorn thing, where they put films right on streaming as well as theaters, and they wanted to show the filmmaking community that they did believe in auteurs and filmmaking again, so they signed a lot of high-profile auteur directors, and Paul Thomas Anderson, I think, was their big get. And so that is the reason, really, this got made the way it does, and it was sort of his dream project. I don't mind if they lose money on this, because fuck them, but I also think it's awesome that we got a movie like this out of it, because it's like weird and strange, and if they're going to have to pay for the dumb nonsense they did to make HBO Max happen, I think this is sort of our restitution, I guess. And so I guess we're even if you actually made this movie. That's cool. About a revolutionary called Perfidia Beverly Hills, played by Tiana Taylor. She is in a relationship with this the guy who does explosives for their revolutionary group called the French 75, which is based on a drink that I thought was okay. I think I like these guys more than the French 75. I don't know. They are a revolutionary group. She kind of gets in this weird sexual relationship with this military leader called Lockjaw, played by Sean Penn, where he is very turned on by her, kind of like dominating him and so forth, as well as she has a relationship with Pat, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. She then becomes pregnant. They find out the cops are coming to get them. She disappears. And then he has to sort of raise her, who's played by this really cool actress called Chase Infinity, who's actually, named after Dr. Chase Meridian for Batman Forever and To Infinity and Beyond from Buzz Lightyear, both 1995 movies. Interesting. I'm curious. I'd love to hear why your parents did that, but it's a cool name, so I'm down with it. But she is living with him. It's been 16 years later, after the French 75 have mostly been killed except for Pat and his daughter. And they come for her. They try to come for her as Sean Penn, character of Lockjaw, finds out where she is, and he decides to put the full weight of the military after her and sort of paraphrasing. And then she is taken in by the remainders of the French 75 who are alive, and Leonardo DiCaprio's character Pat needs to come and meet up with her and find her, and gets help from his daughter's. Is it Pat or Bob? I guess he's become Pat becomes Bob. Most of the movie know him as Bob, but he was Pat before. But anyway, his daughter Willa's karate instructor, played by Benicio del Toro, helps him out and helps him try to eventually find his daughter. And there's a lot going on, and I honestly don't think I could spoil it because it's wild and crazy. The energy of this movie, and particularly when he's on the chase, Pat or Bob or whatever the fuck, when the film becomes sort of a chase movie, when Pat or Bob is trying to sort of meet up with his daughter and escape the cops and stuff like that, that's most of the film. Like, the early parts are one thing, and I will talk about that, but that part, there's such a propulsive energy to it. It really does feel like a chase movie, and like kind of getting lost in the craziness of politics and the stupidness of I think politics are kind of dumb a lot of the times, like not the results of them, but the vindictive nature, particularly in current politics, just always feels like almost a parody of itself. And I think this film very much plays into that. But also the score by Johnny Greenwood, who feels such a part of this movie. It didn't stick out to me. It just felt like such a natural part of it. And when I listened to parts later, I'm like, oh, that is kind of unusual, but the whole movie's so unusual. I just like went with it, and it's such a driving engine to it. Like when I hear the drums, it like fits so well. It, like, doesn't feel unusual, but then when you really think about it, it's completely unusual, and it's a really great score. I think he's everything he does. Paul Thomas Anderson is very good at getting like good composers, cinematography, actors in this. Like, this is such a well-rounded, great staffed movie. It's pretty amazing. But I think the energy in that was pretty interesting and reminded me a lot of kind of like wild kind of 70s movies. But I think the difference between a lot of 70s movies and revolutionary movies is they had a sort of, and I've heard people get mad at this film because of its version of particularly black revolutionaries, which I do think, if you have that opinion, I think it's justified. But I think it's sort of showing the end of what the aftermath of a sort of revolutionary group is, and kind of the fault in that, and who gets to stay behind, and what happens to the next generation, and the ramifications of these things. And I found that to be actually more interesting. It's also interesting, Leonardo DiCaprio's character of Pat or Bob or whoever, sorry I keep doing that, he was in Killers of the Flower Moon, which Paul Thomas Anderson actually did rewrites on. And it's kind of interesting, in Killers of the Flower Moon, Leonardo DiCaprio is very much on the side of white supremacy. And in this, he's like the exact opposite. And they kind of, in a sense, play very much different, kind of play as kind of counterpoints to each other in an interesting way. I mean, they're long. I don't think I could ever, and I don't have time to like watch one next to the other. But I do think they sort of play next to each other in a sense, because in both cases, he's very inept. But in both cases, he like is a driving force behind both, which kind of, I don't know if it's like, I don't want to play these like everyone who cares about things is dumb and stuff, but I think it's also like who makes these things happen is usually the people who, you know, are never really the smartest, which I actually do sort of agree with. But I think it was kind of interesting how he played both in this. I actually really liked him in this. I think it's one of his better performances, but I think it's like, Leonardo DiCaprio might be one of the more interesting millennial actors, because his presence on screen, you know, he was the biggest heartthrob we've seen maybe since Rudolph Valentino or something. And then he seems to want to deconstruct it more than ever. Like, I think in most of his films, he's deconstructing the white American male more so than any other movie star. Almost like he has his own auteur vision of taking it down. While he was there, you know, basically considered to be the, you know, this great white actor of his time. Now he's sort of like ripping it apart, one film at a time, like always playing like, I feel like he's always he's really good at playing a pathetic white dude, but like it's interesting the roles he plays, and I'd like to actually hear his perspective on that, because it's kind of interesting how he, as an actor, seems to want to do that, but he almost sees the kind of I think in this one, he sees the kind of honorableness of him, because like he did raise his daughter, you know, there's a scene where his character gets high before a parent-teacher conference, and that's a rookie mistake. You get high after, obviously. He is a mess, but he's still doing it, and I kind of like that idea in a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. I think he likes these kind of like really fucked up, kind of well-rounded characters, but in this, it's like, well, he's a fucked up like total idiot who's overprotective, but like he did like get her to this point. He did get Willa to this point and like got her, you know, karate class and got her to be like a normal person and stuff like that. And like, I don't know. I'm not saying he's good and that's a good way to parent. I was just like, when I was watching, I was like, I think he actually like, I don't know. I think he did more than you realize. You know, he's like the consistency in her life that she needed, and maybe you don't appreciate that as a kid. When you're older, you're like, oh, I actually like am very happy I had that in my life. I like Benicio del Toro's a lot. I like the whole idea that like, you know, there are other quieter groups that are hiding from the cops that are more organized, which I think is like, yeah, probably. And everything with the government. Sean Penn is probably the first time I've liked him in a long time. I know Sean Penn as a person is like a whole bunch of yikes, but he is a really good comedic actor from like Spicoli to now. And I got a little more of what I liked about him was the Spicoli guy. I don't like how serious he can be. I like when he plays like more funnier, like Milk and this, and I actually thought it was a real return to form. I like Chase Infinity a lot. I saw her that she does K-pop dances with her friends, and those are really cool too, but I thought her presence was great. But Tiana Taylor, and I'll talk about the beginning of the movie with her, is like, she is the mother in this. You don't see her through a lot of the movie, but like, you really, if you're going to have a presence who means a lot to your whole movie, and everyone's going to talk about you and like have an issue with you, and all this shit, you have to have a star-making, commanding performance, and holy crap did she do that. Right when she popped on the screen, I was like, why is she not in action movies all the time? Why is this the only thing? Is this the only thing I've seen her in doing this? I think it is. Like, I think I would remember this. Like, this is amazing. Like, why isn't she in like a bunch of Star Wars and all that? Like, she's so good. Like, this is amazing. Like, I want her to have her own action franchise. Like, she's so good in this. Like, the whole time, I was like, this is a movie star. Holy shit, dude. Like, what is going on here? Like, it just the whole movie. I was like, she is so remarkable in this. I was aware of her before. I've never like been like, I saw her in a Kanye West video where I think at the end she becomes a cat or something. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but like I've heard about like Black Femininity TV did a video on her a while ago, I believe. But she is really amazing in this, and I think like without her performance, a lot of this film doesn't work. And like, I think you talk about like when we talk about film as storytelling and casting and stuff, this was a very well cast movie because like, wow, with her in this. I like Regina Hall, although I feel like she doesn't get to do as much, and like we show her face and like a lot of the people. This does have a great cast, and I find it interesting how it shows revolutionaries. I do know. I mean, I don't know. I think it shows the ridiculousness of like how we have a lot of people running things that just want to be in cool clubs and stuff and will kill whomever to do that, and how dumb that is, but also how evil and supremely terrible that whole thing is. And I think it says a lot about society, actually. It is sort of, you know, it does, like, when I've heard people compare it to like Doonesbury, which I haven't read since I was a kid, but I sort of agree with that. I think it is a very interesting, intense movie, but it's intense in its own weird world. It did remind me of like the whole Christmas League thing, very much remind me of like the weird clubs in Twin Peaks, and like it did sort of remind me of David Lynch in a way, because of all its craziness and all the worlds and all these groups people in or something. But it's also like how revolutionaries are. I know this is like loosely based on Pynchon. I don't know, I've never read a Pynchon book. I know my dad has, but it sort of reminded me of a almost more big whole scale meal of a movie than Inherent Vice. I remember liking Inherent Vice and its kind of weird stoner-ishness that was more based on or very influenced by the work of Robert Downey Sr. Junior's dad was an experimental filmmaker. And this, I think it goes more into his Robert Altman roots. I think it also shows more like, yeah, I would say Robert Altman roots, but I almost feel like it's like, I always heard that quote that like Spielberg, when he did Jurassic Park, was Spielberg doing Spielberg, and you know, Hitchcock, when he made North by Northwest, was like Hitchcock purposely being Hitchcock. And I think that's very true about those two films. But I also feel like with this one, Paul Thomas Anderson is like using his own. I mean, he's obviously using his own voice, but purposefully using it, but like messing with it. I don't think he's a guy who would be like, puts his feet up and rests on his laurels to make, the hit Paul Thomas Anderson movie. I think he's like too much of a big head director for that, which I think is a good thing, actually. I think like I think the fact that this is probably the time where he goes like, I'll just make the pop Wes Anderson movie, and it feels like it rejects it almost every time, which I actually really appreciate it. You have your big budget movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, might as well cash the check, and it feels like he just like he's like, thanks for the money, now I'm gonna like burn all this shit down, which I actually really like. I feel like everyone's thinking about the further career, and I feel like he's just thinking about making another big statement, and I appreciate that a lot more. I don't know if I fully know everything it's saying, but there's so many crazy parts, from like Jungle Pussy to the Alana Haynes stuff, to the cast is crazy. There's so many parts of it are intense and feel very now, but also like you're not sure when this takes place. I almost feel like this is like the movie Eddington wishes it was, but Eddington cared about when it took place, and this is like, what year did it start and why are we here? And I've heard people mention if it's the future, and that's kind of the weird shit I think that works really well in filmmaking, is when you throw specificity out the window and go all in on your craziness. And I think One Battle After Another is an experience. I feel like I need to watch it a few times to say more. I feel like maybe this was too unhinged and off the cuff, because I'm like, whatever the fuck this is, but I love it for that. I really do love this movie for its bizarre nonsense. I hope he continues going off of these weird big budget movies, because I feel like both we need more someone calling us on our dumb bullshit, but I also just love experiencing films like this, and I think it is really good. Not gonna say I only got to see it once in a regular thing, but I was really moved by it, and I also feel like it's one of the few times I see a film that's over 3 hours where at the end I was like, wait, that was 3 hours? Like, it didn't feel it. I didn't feel it at all. I didn't feel the length. It was like a well-told story where I was totally into it, and like I was more into it than I realized, because when it was over I was like, wait, I thought it felt like an hour less than it did, and it was like all these things and craziness and messy, but also compact. It's like a real well-rounded directed film that you get from somebody like that. And I think Paul Thomas, but like a big auteur director, that's the kind of thing you want from a big auteur director. Like, let them cook, let them go off on their craziness. And One Battle After Another is letting him go off on his craziness while also showing us the craziness that is our lives in itself. And then we look back and just go like, oh my God, is it over? And you kind of wonder what it all meant. And I don't know if there is a real answer, but I certainly enjoyed the ride. So if you have seen One Battle After Another and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.